You would think after the trucker convoy deal where they seize people's bank accounts, you'd think people would learn a lesson. If you disagree with whoever's in power, and fine, Trudeau's a bad guy, but he wasn't that smart. But this Carney is an evil genius.
Marc Cohodes, we're back at it again. How are you doing, sir?
Living the dream, Jason. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Well, I mean, as well as I can in this unstable world of ours. Seems like the United States is starting to feel some shockwaves as well. It's not just us anymore. So I do seem to find some comfort in knowing that. But otherwise, getting by, right?
Yeah, what is today? April about 7th?
Yeah.
So what are we, 3 weeks till the election?
Yeah. We're 3 weeks away, and it's I try not to be too cynical, right? Because cynicism it only leads to nihilism. But just seeing how things are transpiring here in Canada, I don't have high hopes for this election. I think that there's going to be a lot of, well, I mean, we've already seen this morning, evidence of interference, but I think the interference runs far deeper than just messages on WeChat. I think that it goes all the way into our elections, Canada, our political structures, everything. And I have this haunting feeling that Eastern Canada and Atlantic Canada are in the bag for the Liberals. I think they just haven't learned their lesson.
Yeah, well, I mean, the good thing is it's all out there. I mean, just like in the States, it was all out there about Trump.
Yeah.
I mean, it was very clear what everyone was getting, and I was tweeting. I mean, I had a problem with the guy running for Senate in Montana, but I was tweeting, elections have consequences. And I got pals who are voting for Double P. I got pals who are voting for Carney, the ones who are voting for Carney. I just said, you guys got to be careful what you wish for, because the only thing I think I'm confident of, Arctic Mexico-wise, is if Carney wins, Alberta's gone.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that is a surefire bet. And then shortly thereafter, Saskatchewan's gone, and then there's no country.
Yeah.
But that's where everyone is in Canada. And if you think different, see what I don't get is, guys like you, guys like Sean Cooper, handful of others. I mean, there's some smart folks on Twitter. I don't see how the average run-of-the-mill Canadian doesn't get it. I don't understand how they don't get the joke that the media is completely bought and paid for. And they're not only bought and paid for, so is the RCMP, so is the Ontario Security Commission, so is the banking regulator. It's all bought, and even my old buddy Eby in BC, he's clearly in the bag. And it doesn't take much incrementally with you guys knowing what a hair trigger Trump now has, and he has this issue with China. I mean, the United States borders China, which is Canada. And it's as clear as day, and Sam and I are talking to the highest people in the United States from a banking standpoint of exactly what's going on. They reached out to us for help because while they know stuff, they know plenty. Sam and I know more, but we don't know everything. We don't know everything that's in play here. And you would think after the trucker convoy deal where they seize people's bank accounts, you'd think people would like learn a lesson. If you disagree with whoever's in power, and fine, Trudeau's a bad guy, but he wasn't that smart. But this Carney is an evil genius. I mean, he's smart and he's sophisticated and he's as corrupt with the Chinese and the WEF as you get. He's not a politician. He's just a stooge. And I'm just amazed, whether it's the interference or this tariff talk or the green energy. I mean, oil has gone in the tank. Why does Canada need this net zero, whatever bullshit he's talking about?
Yeah.
Of Canada's problems, that's probably number 968 on the list.
Yeah.
Of what's wrong. I mean, number one, what's wrong is the money laundering as it goes into the banks, as it goes into housing, as it goes into housing fee related, as it goes into drugs. That's problem 1, 2, 3, and 4. And to think anything else sort of matters compared to that is really like stupid. Because the lady who runs Alberta is smart and she's sort of gritty. And she may be a politician, but she's sort of a regular person. And I think she gets what's at stake. She reminds me a little bit of that Sandy Garasino, and I think she's from Alberta. I mean, she's a tough ass bitch. That's Grimes' mom. But she gets right and wrong.
Yeah.
And I don't always have to agree with her, but she knows what's right and she knows what's wrong. I think Smith knows the same thing. Carney is just a weak sister. He's such a tool for everything that's wrong. I'm just afraid if he gets elected, just all hell is just going to break loose. Well, I know all hell is going to break loose because he's just going to unleash the dogs, and he'll unleash the dogs on people, and it'll just become, I won't call it Arctic Mexico. I'll just call it North China.
Yeah.
But it's as clear as day. I mean, guys are reaching out to me on Twitter with pictures of ports on the Atlantic, where this guy said at night, he said they leave the gates open, and he said you would be amazed what goes on in these ports, what goes in and out of there, at night. So I don't know. I'm not going to say I'm afraid because the world is so broken. Anything can happen. I mean, I don't believe your guys' polls. Everyone says Carney's a favorite. I'm just thinking, like, God, can you guys be like so stupid to actually do this? But maybe you are. I mean, maybe you are. I mean, I bumped into Laura Loomer on an election thing in the States, and she has a huge following here. And I got after her for a month and a half to get Sam on her show. And those two did a great job. And she has a huge following, and it was a huge show. I mean, they got a lot of play.
Yeah.
But I think, and sitting back and thinking, it's a huge North American story. And I think, the decider hopefully would be if Sam Cooper could get on, Tucker Carlson or Rogan or something like that, where he can have a larger North American voice just to like wake people up to what's going on. It would be something. I mean, the US banking guys know what's going on up there. They know. What they end up doing about it, who knows? I mean, I got thoughts, but I got to keep those thoughts to myself. but it's capital B, capital A, capital D, and it's getting worse. You
Yeah.
know, at an increasingly rapid rate. So I don't know. I mean, you're in Alberta, right?
Yeah, yeah, I am. And you know, look, I can just start by speaking to Canadians because this is the problem with Canada is Canadians are very married to the status quo. And it's not just boomers. It's just Canadians in general. We're very traditional in the way that we view ourselves and our country. And so you have this large contingent of people who are hanging on to something that's been dead for a very long time and isn't coming back. It's not coming back. And so the idea is that we're going to be able to elect our way through these problems that we're having. That there's Mark Carney is the cure-all. He's on the right side of the ideological issues, and therefore, but he's a banker. He's a guy from the inside. He's a central banker. He knows how to fix this. What they don't understand is that central bankers aren't economists, right? They're not the same thing. I would go as far as to say that if you put Marc Cohodes in a position to balance our budget as a nation, you would do a far better job than Mark Carney. And
On
so,
my worst day, I'd do a far better job.
right, but it's because you understand money in the way that it moves, right? That's not what Mark Carney does. And so the problem with Canadians is that we change, we fear change, right? Americans are very gung ho about doing whatever's best, whatever benefits them. Canadians are very risk averse. We look at everything as what do we stand to lose, whereas Americans look at everything as what do we stand to gain. And because of that perspective, in the United States, you don't have Trump for better or worse. And in Canada, you're just getting the same old establishment bullshit. We're right back here again. And look, I don't think Pierre Poilievre is a drastic change in one or another direction. I think he's more of the same. But I think he gets that in order to save this country economically, we have to get back to what we're good at. We have to get back to what we do best. And I agree with him there. I don't know what chances we actually have once he's elected, if he's elected. But I know that we have better chances than Mark Carney. It feels like Mark Carney is the nail in the coffin. Right. So, and so with Eastern Canadians, especially at like Quebec and Ontario and Atlantic Canada, all the Liberals need to do is win Ontario, Quebec, and then a few ridings across the country, and they've got it in the bag. They know that. That's the problem with our parliamentary system is that everything is decided by the number of seats, and Quebec and Ontario hold more seats than I think BC, Alberta, and Saskatchewan combined. So by the time it gets to us in the West, we don't fucking matter. Whichever way we vote doesn't matter. And my prediction for this election is I think you're going to see a clear divide in Canada between East and West. The West, including BC, will go blue, will go conservative. And then the East, and that's Manitoba onwards, will go liberal. That's my prediction. That's what I think is going to happen. But here's the other thing too. You know, you mentioned the polls. I think what's happening in Canada is the same shit that they tried to pull with Kamala Harris in the United States and try to make it look like Mark Carney is way ahead of Pierre Poilievre. So those sitting on the fence, those who are married to the status quo, will vote for the Liberals and Carney. However, I think that there is a bigger delta between them, and I think Pierre Poilievre is actually way ahead. But again, it just what it comes down to is Canadians who want to maintain the status quo being willing to step out and take a chance and gamble. And I just don't think they will. Unfortunately, especially Eastern Canadians. You know, you go around the United States, right? You go state to state, and it's like you have 50 countries within a country. Every state is different, with the exception of like the Pacific Northwest, because Washington and Oregon are basically the same place. But everywhere you go in the United States, it's like a different country. Well, Canada is very much similar in the way that we are between East and West, the cultural divide. Eastern Canada is very different than Western Canada, and I think that's why we're going to see this break, And I think that break, once the election is over, should we end up with the Liberals and Carney as prime minister, you're absolutely right. I think a referendum will be introduced in Alberta. I think we will end up voting to leave, and that'll be the first domino to fall. I think Saskatchewan won't be far behind. But see, this is where I kind of go off the beaten path. I think that BC will fall in as well, because they'll have no choice. They'll be completely isolated.
BC will fall in, and they'll take EB and some of his predecessors away in handcuffs for their footsie with the Chinese. But I mean, I think that Alberta sends all their surplus east.
Yeah.
And, when I used to be pals with EB, the conversation used to be, what does the feds do for BC? And his answer was nothing. And I could say, what do the feds do for Alberta? And the answer is nothing. And, people on the outside don't understand how hard it is for Canada to trade inter-province. I know they don't send, criminal or regulatory stuff from one province to the next. It's a real nightmare and a bitch, and it's not easy to trade province to province, and that's maybe where Trump is the evil genius. He knew or could think that if this thing splits, the huge assets, Alberta and Saskatchewan, and they'll come to the States, or at least be a territory. You can call it whatever you want. You can call it Cooperville. Alberta and Saskatchewan will call it Cooperville, and there'll be a United States territory, and then you'll have the rest of Arctic Mexico. But I mean, again, I think I said somewhere that people got more riled up when the Canucks lost the Stanley Cup than they are on all this kind of stuff. And I just don't get it. Again, for the life of me, I do not understand it. But, we'll see how this election thing goes. In a world that's more and more volatile, dangerous, powder keg-like, I would think Canada wouldn't want China as their partner, but I think that ship has sailed and will really sail if Carney gets in.
I agree with you. Now, we talked about the banking angle a little bit earlier, and this was actually what I wanted to talk to you about, because Sam released a 2-part interview with a U.S. official who spoke on condition of anonymity, and I mean, it was very enlightening, because it's strange to me, because we have United States officials telling Canadians what's actually happening. And as you said, most of us really don't know what's going on, or completely in the dark, and still don't know. But Sam kind of laid it out, and he's been on top of this for a long time. He did an interview with a whistleblower from TD on the mortgage fraud side. But now we're talking about Mexican cartels in conjunction with Chinese organized crime, using major banks like TD to launder money from fentanyl proceeds and money from other things through those banks. So, Mark, can you explain to me, as a guy in finance, what exactly is going on here, and what are the consequences of what's going on with TD and other banks?
Yeah, I'll do that, but let me throw some more silverware and food on the table. The average Canadian says, you guys are just wrong about the fentanyl. It comes in through Mexico. And border security is the United States problem in Canada, not the Canadians. Gosh golly gee, it all comes in through Mexico. And that's like the party line, and that's what everyone runs with. And it's like, end of story. And on top of that, I'll throw this on the table. All of the dirty shit that goes on in Canada, law enforcement wise, is not busted by the RCMP or Canada or FinTrack. It's all busted by the DOJ in the United States. All Canadian financial crime, whether it's crypto, whether it was online gambling, money laundering, mortgage fraud, drugs, drug busts. It's all out of the United States. So, one could say Canada can't even govern or law enforce themselves. And I know Sam's anonymous source, and he's speaking to the U.S. authorities as well. So on the banking side, it's not just TD, it's all of them. Maybe it's not National Bank, because National Bank is mobbed up, run out of Quebec and run by the Laurentians. Maybe it's not National Bank, but it's everyone else. And the crazy thing, as I've told officials, Canadian banks can come into the United States and acquire things or run things, but U.S. banks aren't allowed to operate in Canada. And if they were, and they were to put their standards or software through anything that goes through those banks, it would be a whole new ballgame. And that's one of my solutions. One of my solutions is everything needs to be ripped apart from the ground up. OSFI is in the bag, RCMP is in the bag. Banking needs to be done by one North American regulator. And if you don't like the FDIC, come up with a new one or retool the FDIC. But all North American money laundering, know your customer crime, financial crime, all North American banking needs to be run through one regulator, because the loophole and the slippery slopes in Canada. And there is no banking regulation because they're all in on it. And the fees from this illicit money that goes through are so fucking high, both on the banking side, the lawyer side, the payoff side, the real estate broker side, the syndicated mortgage, the private mortgage. There's so much money in terms of fees and revenue in a shitty economy. And you guys have a shitty economy. There's no part of your economy that's good. And now with oil going in the soup or resources going in the soup, makes it worse. You have no gold at the central bank, so it's not like you guys can fall back on gold. It's just the money that's lost, for lack of a better word, the friction costs are so high because it's so crooked. I mean, if I have $300 million that I need to launder through Canada, you can do it A, easily, and B, you don't give a fuck if you're paying $5 to $15 million in fees, because the money's dirty anyway. What do you care? If you can wash it all through or buy some shit-ass trucking business or garbage business, mortgages, buildings, things like that, why not? What do you give a fuck if you're paying incremental fees? Which is why, to me, the big solution is one North American banking regulator that reports basically to the U.S. Treasury Department and is governed and operated by FinCEN. I mean, I know and have so many stories of FinTrack, of just bullshit that's been reported to them, but they just let it go and go and go. It's a toothless regulator. They might as well disband. I mean, whatever deficit Canada's running, close the RCMP, close OSFI, close FinTrack, close all regulation, because no one's regulated. Because regulation without enforcement, and that's a key concept, is worthless. I mean, my kids are older. My girlfriend has a 12-year-old. But when my kids were younger, and the same thing to the 12-year-old, if I say to kids or him, knock it off, if you don't have bite behind the knock it off, they'll just keep doing it.
Yeah.
But if you have some bite behind the second knock it off, they won't do it again. It'll stop. So saying knock it off, knock it off, knock it off. I don't want to tell you again, knock it off. The kid will keep doing whatever bad behavior occurs. And no one in Canada goes to prison for any form of white collar crime. It just doesn't happen. I mean, the RCMP is more concerned about a 14-year-old skating on a frozen pond in Moose Jaw than they are about a guy lifting 15 million from a bank to launder for some East Indian pizza shop. And the RCMP, because I know plenty of them, guys who are legit, they're all universally trained. So the same guy who's working the fire lines in northern BC 2 weeks later could be working on financial crime. They're not expert in anything.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like they have like a financial crime task force that's specially trained in this. They're all generalists. And if you're a generalist and you're compromised, it just keeps on going. And this was back in the days where they used to pull duffel bags of money through River Rock Casino in BC.
Yeah.
Okay, now at least they use crypto. So it's not as obvious. But even when it was obvious moving duffel bags through, they still let it go. So the Canadian banks, without exception, either own brokerage firms or other adjacent banks in the United States, but United States banks can't operate in Canada. And they don't switch or use the same software. So it's not like they talk to each other either. Now everyone could say, oh, I've seen a Wells Fargo branch, that's just a branch. There's no command and control of any United States banking in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
So a solution, not the solution, but it would go a long way. One North American regulator, in my mind, operate out of the U.S. with FinCEN prosecutor authority along with the DOJ, that reports to the U.S. Treasury. And
Yeah.
this is what I told EB, before he popped off and pulled all his bullshit on his press conferences. It's like I said, EB, you have big problems. And it's not like I have to educate you on the problems. At one point in time, you educated me on the BC financial crime problems because you ended up being the Attorney General of British Columbia before you became the Premier. So the joke, gang, is EB knows of all the financial crime, specifically in BC, but he knows all about it in Canada. I mean, the trick would be to get him and Cooper and I on your show, but he won't do it because he knows we're right.
Yeah.
I mean, I have his cell phone number. I mean, we used to be pals. If it wasn't for COVID, he was coming to my 60th birthday here. So he is well aware of the huge issues, the criminal activity that goes on, what officials are compromised. He has compromised guys in his party. He has compromised guys who work for him, and he's compromised. So what's horrifically sad is if you're naive and stupid, and there are stupid politicians up there, really like dumb. I mean, Christy Clark is dumb. I mean, she's dumber than a bag of rocks. She's crooked, but she's dumb. I mean, just a stupid, stupid lady. Not like you could cut her slack, but you could say this lady's stupid. So she just doesn't get it. EB's really smart. And he gets it. And what makes him evil now is instead of addressing the problems, he uses this elbows up bullshit. Team Canada. I mean, Team Canada, one apple spoils the whole bunch.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're on team, what's your favorite hockey team up there? You like the Flames or do you like the Oilers?
I don't watch hockey, but we'll say the Flames because I'm located in Calgary. So
Okay. Well, the Flames, let's say they have 23 guys on their team, and let's say they're really good. But if one of the forwards is fucking the defenseman's wife and it breeds ill will on the team, as talented as they are, they sink or swim with the worst apple of the bunch. They'll then get dissension, the team will split up, they'll start underachieving. Kind of like the Phoenix Suns in basketball. Hell of a talented team this year, but they're doing horrible. But so something's up. Something's not right. So you're only as good up there as your weakest links. And when the premier of British Columbia knows of all the financial crime, knows how it works, knows what it goes through, knows how to fix it, and instead turns a blind eye to it to try to play this elbows up Team Canada bullshit, you're not doing. You're hurting everything. You're a public servant, and you're hurting your province, and you're hurting your country. And I gave him the simple solutions to go to Trump and say, "This is what I know. This is the problem. This is what's going on. This is how we can fix it. But I need your help." And he could have gone to the head of the class along with Smith in Alberta, but instead he's taken a horrifically bad road. I mean, Doug Ford is just plain old stupid. I mean, he's like Fred Flintstone stupid. Yabba dabba doo. He's so dumb. He doesn't even know what goes on. The guy's so dumb. So that's his excuse, stupidity. But EB is smart, and EB knows. And EB was Cooper and my pal, and we helped him get to where he is. Without Cooper and myself, EB would be nothing. And people can go back and check that out, which is what makes this time so disgusting, because it's all preventable. Nothing had to be the way it is. But if your banking regulator won't do anything about it because they're completely captured, RCMP's captured, Globe and Mail's captured, CBC's captured. If everyone's captured and Sam Cooper can't hold a mainstream media job because he's not captured, here's where we are. So the good news is the U.S. Treasury knows what Sam and I know. They know what we know. They know a lot of what we know. FinTrack knows what we know, but they're completely toothless. And FinCEN, the U.S. financial cops, know a lot of what we know. EB knows a good chunk of what we know, but does nothing. And it's going to come down to this election. And if you don't like PP gang, and hopefully every Canadian voter watches this, that may be a little ambitious on my part, but hopefully they do. PP could have a lot of faults, but he can at least slow roll this thing enough to get things fixed, or a path to get things fixed. And what I mean by slow roll is get a commission to look into these things where no one is safe. Create, we have Cooperville, which is Alberta and Saskatchewan. We recreate the Cooper Commission to turn over every stone, and we license U.S. banking software, AML and KYC, where he then outsources banking regulation to the United States. If he puts the Canadian banks under the same regulation that the US banks are under, call it the North American banking regulator, that would be a start. Then whatever assets are ill-gotten, they're seized and they're sold. Money goes to the Canadian coffers, and the perpetrators get deported instantly, and they can be imprisoned somewhere else. That will stop financial crime in its tracks, because then people will realize we can no longer get away with it.
Mm.
So not only am I highlighting the problem, I'm giving everyone a solution. And I don't want anything for the solution. I'm not short or long any Canadian companies. I just want to see people not get completely fucking destroyed. I mean, because the currency, inflation, job outlook, economy, that's bad enough. But eating egg foo young instead of poutine is not the way I'd go through life up there.
Well, look, for our listeners, just to kind of compare and contrast here, what we're referencing is a long running money laundering scheme that was that TD was busted for in the United States, and as a consequence, they got hit with the largest fine in American history. I can't remember the exact number, but
$3 billion, I think, is the number.
$3 billion. Now, compare that to Canada, where TD Bank, for their role in the same scheme, were fined $9 million, which for a bank like TD it's not even a cup of coffee. It's change in your couch.
It's their monthly breakfast budget.
Exactly. And so, I mean, another way to kind of explain this. So during the Freedom Convoy, my name appeared on the list of donors that hit the internet. I drove around in a panic for 3 fucking days because TD wouldn't let me take all my money out at once. They refused. So I had to go to ATM after ATM after ATM, taking out $2,000 at a time, because that was my withdrawal limit that they had put on my account, not before, but after I had made that request. I was a prisoner to my own fucking bank, essentially. I was being held hostage by my own bank. Now, on the flip side of that, you have Chinese students walking into TD with duffel bags full of cash. We're talking $5, $6, $7 million, and making deposits. How the fuck does that happen? That's the question I ask. How does a 17 or 18-year-old kid walk into a bank, not a casino, a mainstream bank, one of the biggest banks in the world, TD, with $5 million in cash, and deposit that into an account and no alarm bells go off? Like, if you had any questions as to whether there's or not there's criminality going on there, well, there's your answer, right?
There's your answer. In the U.S., alarm bells go off if you have more than 10 grand
Yeah.
to deposit. So I once sold an old Mercedes to a guy. I think the guy was a drug dealer, but he was old, so I didn't ask questions. And he paid me 36 grand for the car, which is what I wanted for it. This must be 20 years ago. And he paid me in cash. And he paid me in $20 bills. Wait a minute. 36 grand of $20 bills. And we were in this like hole in the wall restaurant, and he weighed them. So he didn't like count them out. He put them like on a scale, like $1,000 weighed 15 grams, 10,000 weighs this. So he was like weighing money. And I went to the bank to deposit it because it's just like a shit pot full of just bills. And the person at the Wells Fargo I knew said, no, you better not try this at once. Come with $9,000 a day, because anything 10 grand or over,
Right.
blows off alarm bells in
Right.
the United States for an individual.
Yeah.
Right. So, and I've been a Wells Fargo customer since '83. So, if it's 10 grand in the US, okay, you have a 2 grand withdrawal limit, okay, and the Chinese person is showing up with 5 million in cash, no question answered, you know, this is just part of the issue. And look, TD's not the only problem. BMO has huge issues. CIBC has huge issues. Royal Bank, I think they acquired what, HSBC?
And
They
HSBC was at the center of it before
they're
the
that
acquisition.
right when they were in like deep shit trouble, I think Royal Bank bought them out. They're one is as bad or worse than the next. People know the TD because of this US thing. I mean, fuck, I was behind the home cap, exposing home cap in the mortgage fraud. If TD was fined 9 million, home cap at least was fined 12.5 million,
Mm.
right? Which is, that thing was a total scam, total. You know, fining people, corporations, $9 million, it just doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
And especially on the backdrop of all the crypto frauds that have been exposed and run out of there, or the online gaming frauds, which again, that's just another aspect. These are all parts of money laundering. Same thing with the cannabis companies up there. Sam can tie those guys to fentanyl. I mean, why do Canadian cannabis companies trade in the United States, but the United States cannabis companies can only trade in Canada? So it's so reversely fucked up. Sam and I think we can fix it. We can, better yet, come up with ideas and implementations where
Yeah.
it can get fixed. I'm not looking for a job, and I'm sure not going to come up and work in Arctic Mexico. As long as, the rascals running around are running around. But, when I used to go to Toronto, they used to detain me at the airport every single time.
Yeah.
30 to 40 minutes shut every single time.
Yeah.
And it was just, they wanted me to know that they knew I was there. And it's uncomfortable.
Of course.
But you're right on a lot of things, but where you're really right and where everyone should sort of listen in and think and tell your friends, don't be happy with the status quo up there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're right. People are very happy as long as it doesn't directly affect them at this time. They're very fine with the status quo. When it starts getting too close to home, that's when people start getting concerned, and they get very they wrap themselves in the maple leaf. But I'm just trying to create a situation where people think.
Yeah.
Because this election to me is it's just do or die.
Yeah.
I mean, this is it. I mean, if Carney gets in, the wheels will start to turn, I think, quickly on things, and it does no good for anyone to say, yeah, these guys were right. I've been right. I mean, Sam and I have been right since 2014. So being right with the place falling to pieces does me no good.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly it. It's like, it doesn't matter if you're right, but there's no action. And that's kind of where I've been sitting too, is like, I've been right about a lot of things, and I've been called names. I've been writing for 20 years.
Yeah.
I was right about a lot. I've been called a Nazi. I've been called alt-right. Back in the day, I was called a commie. I've been called every name in the book, and I don't really give a fuck about that. What I'm trying to do, all I'm doing is, like, look, at the end of the day, man, you don't have to do this. Neither do I. We don't have to do this shit, right? I mean, I could just ride off into the sunset and go do some menial job and just disappear into the ether. We're here because we see something wrong. We know what the answers are. We know what's right. Now, look, we might not be right about everything, at least speaking for myself, but I think I'm intelligent enough to see what's happening in front of me. And here's the thing, I grew up around a lot of the criminal activity that has come to bear on Canada. So I know exactly what the fuck is going on. And it's incredibly frustrating to watch. I call them mainstream Canadians because that's what they really are. Is mainstream Canadians walk blindfolded off the cliff by choice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like, that's the problem. Look, you want to talk about information distribution in Canada? The problem is again, Canada is habitually behind the rest of the world by roughly 5 to 10 years consistently.
It's like the South in the United States.
Right. Everybody here is still using fucking Facebook to get their information. Have you opened Facebook? Every now and then I'll open it because my mom will tag me in a meme that she wants me to like or something, right? And I'll just quickly scroll through. It's just a sea of mental illness and actual real misinformation. And if this is where you're getting your information from, well, then of course you're misinformed. Of course you don't know what the fuck is going on around you. If you're listening to CBC or CTV or Global or any of these legacy media outlets, you're being led hook, line, and sinker into the fucking slaughter. And the thing is it's not like these legacy media networks in Canada are deliberately leading you into the slaughter. It's that they're on the hook for the federal government for their fucking paychecks, right? Yep. They need those subsidies in order to pay their employees and keep the lights on. So it's not a matter of where they sit ideologically. It's a matter of their bills being paid or not being paid. And it baffles me how mainstream Canadians don't see it. I agree with you. I understand how they don't, because part of it is willful blindness and part of it is just not knowing any better.
Well, hopefully between now and April 28th, Ole Evinrude shows up.
Yeah.
This thing about this CCP guy, the MP, getting him to finally step away, and they replaced him with the guy who I saw a video of him singing the Chinese national anthem.
Yeah.
Whatever happened with running Ole Evinrude for MP?
Yeah.
Just some plain old Canadian. And I'm not a racist, and don't call me a racist and things like that. But God, it's tough to see, and it's frustrating to watch.
Well, what's really hard, Mark, is that, look, we have a very large Chinese population in Canada, particularly in BC, right?
I've heard.
And so we know what some of those people are doing here, but we also have a lot of Chinese people in Canada who immigrated here for the right reasons, went to school here, got a job here, contribute to the economy, have every right to partake in all of the aspects of Canadian society. But the problem is, say, for example, like this with this newest foreign interference leak, the CCP is using WeChat, which is the most popular messaging app in China, to send propaganda messages in favor of Mark Carney and the Liberals to the Chinese diaspora in Canada, which accounts for millions of people. So how do we solve that problem? I'm a free speech absolutist, but this issue alone makes me rethink my position. Because should we allow WeChat in Canada if it's being used for that purpose? Do we allow these messages to be sent amongst the Chinese diaspora if they're being used specifically to influence an election? I don't know. I don't know the answer to the problem. Nor can we.
The simple answer is, if you guys would enforce the rule of law to begin with,
then we wouldn't have this problem.
This wouldn't be an issue, because the people who are paying for this or bribing people or controlling folks would be out of the country.
Yeah.
They'd be out of the country and their money would be seized. So it wouldn't really be a problem.
Yeah.
And foreign interference in elections where it's so goddamn obvious. If it was subtle, fine, I get it. Then you could say you're a conspiracy theorist. But the shit that Sam turns up is not subtle. It's just black and white. It's just like shooting a penalty shot. It's just, there's no doubt about it, what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So It's lack of enforcement, complete buy-in by the CCP to the Canadian regulatory system, and it's been allowed to go on. So all they really need is one more election. That's all they need to break the entire country is one more election. I mean, they had two shoes fall with Justin his first two times, and now this would mark the end as Canada as you know it.
So, Mark, before I risk burning you out here, I do want to ask you one more question. There is a lot of economic stability right now in the United States. Well, a lot of panic caused by these Trump tariffs. So, Mark, you're a guy who lives in this world. You're an expert on finance and these matters. So I wanted to ask you, is the panic that we're seeing in the United States justified?
You know, it's a very simple question. I'm going to answer this thing three ways. One is when Trump got in, and again, I'm not a Trumper. There are certain things he does that I like, certain things he does I don't like, but I didn't vote for Trump. Trump is very ego-driven, and his backers are these billionaire oligarchs. So they're very tied to the stock market and how the economy does. In terms of this tariff stuff that he's done, this is a one-man car wreck. I've seen 1987, I've seen the Russian debt crisis, I've seen 2008, great financial crisis, I've seen Operation Desert Storm, I've seen everything because I started in '82. I've never seen a one-man train wreck caused by ill-advised rhetoric, which is these tariffs. Now, there's a whole lot of people arguing that it makes sense and this is good, but when you destroy equity markets worldwide to the degree that these have been done, clearly that's not a good thing. Now, someone would say, well, he wants interest rates down. Well, there's a lot of ways to get interest rates down without crashing the economy or the stock market. So it's a very unmeasured take a nuclear bomb to hit a mosquito way of going about doing things. And I think that there's too much leverage in the system, and they've done a great job the last 3 days blowing leverage out of the system. There was too much optimism and speculation in the markets. He's done a wonderful job of destroying that. But to me, I don't think we're going into a recession. I don't think we're going into a depression. I think this is a negotiation by him to try to get things, the trade balance down. I mean, people are so dumb. They're confused between trade imbalance and deficit imbalance. People have been trying to push the two together, and one has nothing to do with the other. And everyone is confused because everyone is so FOMO, no one stops and thinks for themselves. And I'm a free thinker, and I'm a truth to power speaker. But when you lose your ability to think for yourself, or to think critically, or express yourself, and you see this insanity going on around you, right? It's very easy for people to lose their shit and panic because you don't know what to believe because people haven't been brought up thinking for themselves. So, do I think the U.S. is going to have a recession? No. Do I think things could slow down? Yeah. Worst comes to worst, the Fed will cut rates, and Trump will claim victory because he'll get everyone to lower their tariffs, and we'll be on the next thing. But he's not a politician. He doesn't really care, but he cares what people think of him. And as he would say, he likes to win. So I think things will die down. The market's been violently awful for a while, and we'll just see. I mean, I think it's what you see is what you get, and you should never have money in the stock market that you can't afford to lose. That's one thing I say. Number two is you should know what you own. And I think if you can't explain to a 10th grader in a paragraph or less what you own, and that could be gold, Bitcoin, bonds, stocks, real estate, you probably shouldn't own it. And one of the reasons why I've never owned a stick of crypto is I've yet to have anyone explain to me what crypto is or why I should own it in a paragraph, two paragraphs, or a page or less that made any sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, meme coins are just a flat out rip off. Crypto, I think, is a tool for money launderers to move money around. And it sure isn't a currency because currency is not this volatile. So it's cryptocurrency. And even if you look at Bitcoin, I mean, Bitcoin's fashioned after a gold coin. So if you want a gold coin, buy gold coins. You don't need to buy Bitcoin. If you want gold, buy gold. You want oil, buy oil.
Mm-hmm.
So I think things are broken, been broken. Trump's used his rhetoric to stir up everyone in Canada. Notice I don't use Arctic Mexico so much on this go round.
Yeah, I'm surprised, Mark.
Well, I want people to understand how fucking serious it is right about now.
Yeah.
Right? I don't want people to say that's just a guy's saying bad things about Canada, calling us Arctic Mexicans. Well, you are Arctic Mexicans, but you better take this upcoming election very, very seriously because this thing is going to have huge consequences.
Yeah.
Huge consequences. But you know, I'm not concerned about stocks. I'm not concerned about the economy. I'm most concerned about Canada and what could happen there. That's a bigger risk for the states than Trump mouthing off about tariffs. I think Lutnick will be the first to go, and we'll see what happens.
So, with this, I mean, he's trying to solve the trade imbalance issue, but he's also trying to bring manufacturing back to the United States and kind of level.
That'll never happen.
Yeah, and see, this is the way that I look at it, and the reason why I think that this is partially ill-advised is because when you talk about bringing manufacturing back to the United States, everybody kind of has this vision in their head of like 1970s Detroit, where you're working on a line at an auto plant and you're making, more than enough money to have one income in your family, take trips to Europe once a year and own 2 cars. But what we're talking about is, like where I live in Alberta, we have 2 Amazon distribution facilities near us. A lot of people in my community work there. And I've heard fucking nightmares. Like I'm talking people having to.
People aren't going to do that anymore. I mean, it's either going to be AI. I mean, look, way back when there were department stores, Nordstrom or Macy's or even Sears. Again, women used to, when they had a job, they'd work at Nordstrom's and they'd sell people clothes and they get a commission and stuff like that. Now, happening women are influencers or OnlyFans girls. They make far more money and they can work at home and they do their own hours and they don't pay tax and they're not going to go work at a Nordstrom's. They're not going to go work at a 9-to-5 job. No one is. I mean, look at you. You're a happening guy. You're not going to go assemble iPhones in Saskatoon. Not a fucking chance. And high schools, at least in the States, they've canceled shop. I mean, when I was in high school, there used to be shop where you used to learn how to saw wood, build things, be a tradesman. There is no more shop, right? People don't learn in high school a craft, right? I mean, you just try to, you're either going to go to college, go to the army, or get a job, or go to jail, or do something like that. You're not interested in going to Waukesha, Wisconsin, and lacing up or sewing Nike shoes or running a t-shirt press. I mean, those days are so gone. I mean, fuck, you can't even work at the McDonald's. They're going to robotics McDonald's shortly. So this concept of going back to where we were, it's just not going to happen. The trick is, reality is the reality. The States or Canada, whoever, has to come with some agreement with China, Thailand, Vietnam, Singapore, wherever the hell it is, Penguin Island, where they're slapping tariffs on the whole thing. Just got to come with an agreement. The deal's the deal. We'll do the best we can and keep it rolling. We have bigger problems in the world than that shit, I'll tell you. But Trump's brought this all on himself. So,
and so just in closing, Mark, this current economic shockwave that's reverberating out from the United States around the world. You said Trump's brought this on himself, but do you see this as being a situation where it's short-term pain for long-term gain, or is it just short-term pain for really no reason at all?
Short-term pain for some level of gain somewhere down the line.
Okay.
When, where, how. If I were to forecast it some day in here, what is today, Monday? Wednesday, Thursday, Friday comes out and says, we've had tremendous conversations with 100 nations. Tremendous progress has been made in the trillions and trillions of dollars, right? Therefore, I'm postponing the tariff to go into effect on this, and I'm going to move it to July 19th because we're making so much progress, right? So he'll kick the can. He'll have some deals in hand. Look, I'll go on the limb. Maybe the markets fly, maybe they don't. And then everyone's going to work on the next soundbite, which will be the Canadian election. But he can't, with Steve Schwarzman, Ken Griffin, Jeff Bezos, all these guys giving him Elon Musk giving him all sorts of money in his campaign. He's cost these guys hundreds of billions of dollars. And these are his supporters. I'm too cynical to believe it's going to be allowed to happen. He's not going to tell Steve Schwarzman to go fuck himself. The guys who put him in office and these billionaire oligarchs. So if people are worried, it's fine to worry, but I'm not worried. I'm just not. I'm worried about your guys' election.
Yeah. And Mark, listen, we'll cap it here, but I'd love to have you back after the election as a postmortem.
Yeah, I can't. We'll do that. I can't wait to meet you one of these days too. You're a good guy, and your parents raised you right. And
thank you.
Just keep on going.
So, well, if things go the wrong way, I might need you to hire me as an intern at your fund so I can get the fuck out of this country.
I don't have a fund. You can pick apples and pears later in the year.
Yeah, I was gonna say, me and Sam will be working in your fucking orchard.
Exactly. That's what we'll do. But thank you, Jason. Thanks for having me. And
absolutely,
we'll have at it.
Yeah, Mark. Thanks again for the wonderful conversation, and we'll circle back in a couple of weeks.
Sounds good.